Recording in progress.
Hi, this is Laura. Welcome back to the next episode of Triggers and Spiritual Medicine. I am your host. For those who don't know me and may be new to this podcast, I am the founder of Healing with Spirit and Healing Trauma Through Spirit. I am a multi-generational, multidisciplined healer and intuitive author, ceremonialist, mother, grandmother, crone. I guess we can keep the titles going on, right? And boy, you are in for a very potent episode. I'm so looking forward to this conversation. And if you are a woman, by the way, who is feeling maybe enraged right now, hopeless, maybe despondent, hopefully this conversation between Tatiana and myself will help give you some practical tips on how to move rage through the body, how to give space for processing and tools for effective, even conversations with the men in our lives. And I know for myself and for others, it's the level of grief I have been feeling, both for myself and my journey, as well as for the collective, has been quite immense. And let me introduce you to our guest, Tatiana, who has over 20 years' experience learning from First Nation elders and traditional healers around the world. She has become a beacon of ancestral wisdom and holistic healing. She believes that returning the womb to its rightful place of honor, respect, and reverence is essential to birthing the new world we all long for. Because of this, Tatiana's deepest desire for women and girls everywhere is to know themselves as sacred and divine. As the author of Path to Puberty, the ultimate resource guide for moms of daughters, a coach, a singer, teacher, and the founder of the herbal product company Voice of the Womb, she is a trusted voice in navigating the stages of womanhood with grace, humor, and wisdom. And I have sat in ceremony and circles with Tatiana probably, I would say, what, 8+ years, maybe 10 years, something like that. And you are going to be in for a treat. I want to say treat. Um, Tatiana, for those who may be meeting you for the first time, can you please tell us a little bit about your journey and, what led you to dedicate your life to this womb wisdom, the rites of passage, and supporting women through life's thresholds?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here, Laura, and I hope I can live up to some of some of what I say I do. Um, I my
Don't we
journey,
all, by the way?
yeah. I mean, and I think about these. I think we're in this moment with all these titles and all these things that we do. Like the goddess is rising, and she has many arms, and we're sort of breaking out of this mode of like I need you to fit into this one box so I can understand who you are and what you do, and that's just not the feminine way. That's not how we're actually designed to just like do the one thing, and I think some people are, and a lot of us are not, and so I'm in celebration of the many arms that I have.
Which brings me, if I just may say, what comes to mind is Sanju Kanem in Japan, which is a deity we work with in the traditional indigenous Japanese traditions in Japan, Reiki. And I see her as a she. She's actually, depending on how you view her, she could be male, non-binary, female, all of these things. But she is the representation of the Bodhisattva in between worlds, but has 1,000 arms, 1,000 different tools. And when you invoke and calling her in, she's helping you with which tool you might be using and utilizing.
There you
So
go.
I had to fit that in there because when you said
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I mean, I think about I've done a lot of connected a lot with Kali over the years. Speaking of anger and rage, and you know, she's got a ton of arms too, and she's got all the different tools that she's carrying, and I think that it's just time to really embrace that more. Um, I think in terms of my own journey, like many women who are in this space and in this work, I started with my own healing. You know, I was diagnosed with PCOS when I was like 14. I was put on birth control. I was put on birth control so that I wouldn't get my period at all. My body completely rebelled. And then, you know, I started getting into alternative healing and alternative spirituality, like really young. Um, and then I was, you know, I had this like big prayer for a Native American teacher. I had all these horrible stereotypical ideas of what that would look like, um, and then I was led to Lone Wolf. I'm actually writing a book about that experience right now. Um, he was a, you know, medicine man who knew over 4,000 wild plants and taught wilderness survival skills, and I became his mistress. He was a Vietnam vet. He was old enough to be my dad. Totally energetic and psychically manipulative person, alcoholic. Um, yeah, so I was, you know, in his life for almost a year, and that was kind of my initiation into sort of the shadow side of a lot of things, I guess you could say. Abusive relationship dynamics, abusive spiritual power. And then from there, I was really blessed to be able to go to Hawaii. My mom had a friend who runs a Dharma retreat center on the Big Island, and just sort of dive into 4 solid months of doing nothing but excavating my own wounding and healing. And I mean, I arrived in Hawaii so broken that I was willing to look at and face anything that I had to within myself to transform the, the energetics of my life at that time. Um, and some of those tools I still use today. I was 22, 23 when I landed there, 22. So, um, you know, that was 20 years ago. And I have sort of spent the rest of that time learning, you know, sitting in women's circles, holding space for women, studying midwifery and doing birth work, and, you know, and then deaths in my own life really initiated me into that world. So it's been a long journey. I have many books inside of me to write about it. But yeah, most of, you know, I do have like a ministry training that I did through the Center for Sacred Studies that was a 2 year ordination, and ancestral trauma healing. You know, I've done like my trainings along the way, but really my life has been my training. My life has been my initiation. I think for a lot of us who do this really deep work, you can't really I don't think that you can get a degree in how to hold space for somebody through like the depths of the most eviscerating grief and horror. Like you have to have been through it. You can't just
I,
study the idea of it. You have to have some lived embodied experience. And so for me, that's really my life has been my training and my work with my elders. You know, I've been so blessed to find aligned elders after my lone wolf experience who are actually holding something really strong and ancient, and holding it with a lot of integrity and respect. And I mean, they've been my best teachers, and there's no certifications for that kind of work. That's just ceremony work you show up to over and over and over again throughout the years, and it instructs you. um, so yeah, that's a little bit about me
there's
and
something to be
journey.
said about living with the ancient wisdoms and the ways that we, especially as white women, have our lineages have kind of forgotten, right? Our own history and rites of passage and our own power. And you're right, you know, there's only so much you can learn in a school setting. Theory does not equate to experience or lineage. and it doesn't equate to what it takes to hold space, to move through those difficult challenges, right?
Yeah, and there's, I
So,
mean, I'm not to say that like it's not worth anything. Like those,
right.
there are really good trainings out there, but the whole, you know, the like shamanic certification thing, like I just don't, I like there some of that is like I what does that even mean? You know, I think there are things that life chooses us to learn and to be initiated into, and some of those initiations, um, you can't manipulate that. You can't control that. You can't direct that. That is something that is going to happen to you. It's just like becoming a woman, like starting your moon. That's not something that you can say, like, okay, I'm going to schedule when I start my first period and I'm going to like design a whole thing around it and it's going to look like this. And, you know, at the end, it's like that's not a thing. And I think again, like coming back into like the feminine wisdom is really stepping back into the surrender and the acknowledgement that life is going to initiate us.
I think that is a key point what you just said. It's life initiations, right? These aren't initiations that can be bought as, you know, you buy an initiation online or you buy an initiation with somebody who just got certified in something like last weekend. These are, we're not talking about the same types of initiations. And I think that
Yeah,
there has to be a distinction here. Like these are really big initiations. These are life altering initiations that no one can really teach, no one can really certify. Nobody, like you can't learn these in a formal traditional school. And I agree, like degrees are helpful to an extent. I mean, with the trauma work I do, especially with women, I've always said training and experience go hand in hand, you know?
absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
so we learn things from our elders, we learn things from our teachers, right? What do you wish everyone understood about the wisdom carried within their own body?
First of all, that it's there. I think it's something that we've forgotten. Um, but then also how to connect to it. And that can be a really long journey and process and re education. And I don't think that it's even something that is like once you learn it, then it's done. Because especially as women, our bodies are constantly changing. And so, how we engage with them and the feedback that we are getting is going to shift and is going to change. Um, and also like there's wisdom in the body, and that's not the only place that wisdom exists. And there needs to be sort of a an interweaving of the heart space, which is not, I'm not just talking about like the pump of your heart that exists in your body, but like the energetics of inhabiting your heart and filtering the information that we get from our bodies through that energetic portal. And that's a lifelong study and practice. That's not, again, it's not something you're gonna like learn in a weekend. Like this is a,
Right.
it's just like any relationship. It takes time to cultivate understanding amongst two people, to really get to know one another, and approaching your body that way. Like this is a dance of relationship and relationality that I'm in with my body. And and things happen. We get injured, we get sick, you know, we go through changes over the course of our life. And so not always relating to our bodies as if they were who we were yesterday. Today's a new day. What is here now? Um, yeah, it's a conversation and it's ongoing.
Yeah, I mean, I as I say to some of my clients, right? I say we hear mind, body, spirit all the time, right? Like we hear that. But I say, do you really understand what that means? Do we really understand what that means? And I know from the Japanese traditions, it's a lot of understanding that the physical body, the mental etheric body, and the spiritual body are independent of each other, yet interdependent of each other. And so when we have like a very difficult or challenging or traumatic experience, for instance, because I feel like that conversation has to be had, right? We have a lot of women right now that are carrying tremendous grief, carrying tremendous anger or exhaustion or despair right now because of everything that's going on in and around us right now. And it's understanding, okay, how is it showing up physically? How is it showing up mentally and etherically? And how is it showing up in the spirit? And then how is it interwoven,
Yeah, and
right?
also I want to speak to that exhaustion that's coming up right now because I think that oftentimes when we have things that happen in our bodies that are less than ideal or unpleasant, there's this immediate move to want to try to fix it. Um, and that exhaustion that is pretty prevalent right now is not, I don't believe, something that we need to first try to fix. I think the first step is to just like acknowledge it and let it be there and not actually move to fix it right away because there's a tremendous amount of information in that exhaustion that might be as simple as like honey, you actually need more sleep. um and
That
also
sacred pause,
like
right? It's
yeah,
that sacred pause.
there is a huge collective moment that we're in right now, and letting the exhaustion inform us, I think we're really remiss if we don't do that. Like there's information in all of the feedback that our body is giving us, including the really uncomfortable stuff. And it's not about just jumping to fix it and make it better, because we might be in that process just perpetuating more of the same thing. Because the body is not always giving us feedback about something physical. Sometimes the
Right.
body is giving us feedback about something in our environment, in our emotional world, in the collective. And how are you going to know what that is unless you slow down and actually tune in and listen to what your body is trying to tell you and give it a minute to just be like, I'm here, I'm listening. And it might not say anything at first. And that has to be okay too. Like, especially if you don't have a practice of relating, you can't just walk up to a stranger and expect them to tell you their life story if you have no foundation of relationship with them. It's the same with these messages from the body. You've got to start by just like, okay, I'm here. I'm here. I'm sorry I haven't been listening. Please forgive me. I love you. What do you need right now?
And I think the constant fixing that you were talking about, right? I kind of, or the need to do something, even if you are exhausted, you say, okay, I'm going to rest. But in that rest, you're going, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, right? You're not really resting. You're not giving yourself that space. And I call it, it's like you have a tourniquet on your arm. And instead of loosening it up, you're tightening it without even realizing we're tightening that flow and that restriction. And we're blocking our ability to even hear and listen to what our body's reverberating backwards, right?
Yeah, and your body might be asking you for like a complete life overhaul, which is very inconvenient. But
Very,
but your
right?
body's going to keep trying to get your attention until you do the thing. And that's, I think that's part of where a lot of this work is really fucking hard, because more often than not, the messages that we're getting aren't necessarily what we want to hear, because making the changes that are being requested of us takes maybe energy we feel like we don't have, maybe courage we feel like we don't have. Um, and if there's anything I know about the body, it's going to keep getting louder to get your attention.
Right. And I do you feel that the exhaustion, because this is at least what I'm seeing and feeling in my end, the root to the exhaustion too is rooted in repressed anger and that repressed sacred rage, you know?
Repressed a
And,
lot of things. I don't think just
yeah,
repressed anger. Honestly, I think repressed pleasure too. Like
yeah,
the anger, absolutely. There's a lot of anger, but also like we have forgotten how to allow ourselves to experience joy and to experience pleasure. And I like I think it's really important to be able to move rage through the body. And I also think we can get stuck in this place of anger. Because, like, really, what are we moving it forward for? We are here, especially as women, we are creative beings. That is like our purpose is to create, whether it's life, whether it's a business, whether it's a garden, like what have you. We are creators. And so when we are not creating, or when we're past our creative time and we're holding that space of guiding and being the elder, I think there's still creation that happens. It's just maybe more in the dreaming world and less in the physical world. Like really acknowledging what we're being called to do and what we are not allowing through is a really important inquiry and investigation that every woman has to do for herself. I also think that part of the exhaustion is that like we have become isolated and separated from one another, and COVID exacerbated that. Like that had already started. We had already started to be getting fractured into groups ideologically, but COVID really I think that personally, I believe that isolation was the worst thing that we could have done. I think that the fact that we implemented that worldwide, maybe it slowed the spread. I don't know that it slowed how many people actually died. And the psychological reverberations and impact of that are so incredibly immense and have been so damaging. And that first and foremost, we need to contend with the impact. Like people are just trying to like get back to life as normal without acknowledging like holy shit, that was huge, and that was hugely traumatic. And now like I am fragmented from my community, and how do I get back? What is it going to take to stitch to, and maybe it's with a different community because of what COVID did, and there's grief there that needs to get like all of it needs to get contended with.
right.
And I mean, what I think it was when everything was happening in Minneapolis. I mean, there have been several moments this year where I'm like, can we all just collectively as a society agree that we need a fucking day off and we need to stop? Like everything needs to stop. That was the one gift of COVID, is that
Yes.
actually people stopped for a minute. But we need to stop together, not in isolation, not in fragmentation. We need to take a breath and a moment and come together and circle our arms around each other and cry and wail, because, like, I'm feeling it right now coming up. Like, that was a lot. This has been a lot. And if we don't pause and we just barrel through it, like, what are we doing? What are we doing? What are we collectively creating in that, like, just steamrolling over? This was a huge fucking trauma. Stop
Very
for a
much so.
second.
Yeah.
Stop for a second and breathe and acknowledge that. Because you can't move forward otherwise.
I want to just circle back briefly to what you said about rage and anger, because I know in some of the work I do, we've been dabbling on, and I guess even in Japan, they have even two words for anger because it's how it's expressed differently. We have ikaruna and okuruna. Depending on what it represents, it's a different expression. So there's like anger, right? Like there's anger, unfiltered anger that's like rooted like in your liver, right? That's just unfiltered, violent, misaligned, all of these things. And then there's the sacred rage that lights up in the womb space. And that I see as giving birth to what you were talking about, to creativity. and how do we move forward? Can you speak to that? And can you speak to what does healthy expression look like?
Well, I
Right? I
think
know we
that
kind of touched upon some of that.
yeah, I love that. And I'm not really familiar with the Japanese tradition, so I love hearing that there's two different words for anger because I think it's absolutely true. And I think there's the anger that breeds violence, and then there's the anger that is actually deeply rooted in love. And again, this is an investigation that only the person holding the anger in that moment can do. Um, what's the origin point here of my anger? Is this just like I need to take some milk thistle and stop drinking coffee for a minute? Or is this like really that
Right?
sacred rage? And I think, I mean, on a collective level, because we have the individual and then we have the collective, and they're interconnected, and like yes, we all need to be doing our individual work. And I think we're also coming into this time where that we can't separate the individual work from the collective work because the collective is impacting our individual experience and vice versa. And so honoring and acknowledging that has to happen. But just going back to that like root of love, like when and this is like that heart womb connection, right? Because that sacred rage does live in the womb. And there are many women that are rising up right now with this. It is sacred. It is holy rage, and it deserves expression. And it deserves to be felt. And sometimes it's just like a fire in the body that you just have to let it burn. And again, it doesn't need anything other than witnessing. I think we've forgotten the power of just witnessing. Again, we go to try to fix or we have to do something with it. It's like sometimes you just have to let it burn. But also, what is the origin? What is the love that's underneath it? What is oftentimes anger is, and that sacred anger is coming at because it's a protector. It's trying to protect something. And what is it protecting? What is it that we have discovered that we are waking up to that is so precious that needs protecting? And I mean, if the files have revealed nothing, it's that child. Like it's the children. It's the mama bear. That's what's waking up. That's sacred rage. It's the child within us. It's the actual children in our communities. Like
Yeah.
that is what I'm seeing. That's coming up not just in myself but in the women around me. It's like, whoa, this is about the children, and all of this conversation about gender and race and all that shit and politics. Like there are children that need to be at the center of this conversation, and the children, it doesn't matter where they come from, those children are who need to be being protected right now.
Yeah, that speaks to, speaking about the files, I saw something today that really hit home, and it said something to the extent of like, the files, we know if that enraged you, can you imagine that the family court files are worse?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And what the fact that the family courts are legally trafficking children to documented rapists, pedos, abusers, violent offenders at an alarming rate, and as I mentioned before we came on, like domestic violence rate, homicides have doubled, and yet the rage has gone up. And yet at the same time, like, I remember last year we were together and we were doing rites of passage and we were welcoming in the young maidens, and I had a lot of grief because all I kept thinking about were all the young girls, including the younger self of myself. My daughters, granddaughters, and everybody else's daughters were deprived of having something so beautiful, and to witness that power and understand that. I think the disconnect, at least from what I'm seeing as somebody, I call myself like the late bloomer. It was very disconnected from my own womb for many decades, is How do you connect to it when you've been disconnected? How do you understand that that sacred rage is there when you don't even know the power of your own womb, that you have been conditioned to shame it, to flush it away, to hide in a closet, that as if it's a bad thing, right? And how do we shift that ideology and understand, starting with the children, right? Starting with the girls, and saying that this is magical. This is where your power actually resides,
Well, but we
right?
have to start with the girl within us. We can't actually start with the girls outside of us until we've done
Right,
that work on ourselves, because otherwise we're just it's going to get weird.
right.
And that's why I wrote my book. That's why I do the menarche reclamation ceremonies, because going back, time is nonlinear,
Right.
and we have absolutely the capacity and the responsibility, I think, once we start to wake up to these things, to travel back to that first time when we started our bleed, when we started on this medicine wheel of the woman's experience, to go back and to give her what we never gave her, what she never received, to mother her the way that we wish that we had been mothered. All of the things that live in there, in the grief that we didn't get to have that, of course, it's not the same as being raised with it, but we absolutely can, and I believe have a responsibility to go back and to hold our inner maiden through that, um, through that sacred time, and to repattern, because I've seen it, I've done it. We can repattern, and we need to repattern the programming that we received in order to create something new. If we skip that step and we just try to go right into, like, I know this is good for you and I wish I had this and so I'm going to give it to you,
Right.
we're going to pass it on with some of that programming, and it doesn't go well. And so, and it's not to say, like, because I think healing can become its own trap too, where we just get stuck in this, like, I just have to keep healing myself all the time and like never do anything in the world. It's that fix it thing, like, oh, there's another thing to
Mhm.
fix. And so I think there is a balance to still showing up in our life, showing up in our communities the way that we wish somebody had shown up for us, and allowing those experiences to bring up what they bring up within us so that we can address and heal it. And and maybe it's never going to be fully healed if you're approaching this work and you're 40s, 50s, 60s, and this is like the beginning of your path with it. You might have a big scar there for the rest of your life that you walk with, that is a testament to the story that you've lived, and there's nothing wrong with that. And that gets to just be a part of your story. And I think I really want women to hear that too, that, like, scars are okay, like stretch marks are part of life. It's proof that you stretched, that you grew. The scars are proof that you
You
walked through
survived.
something, you survived, yeah, like all of it. So not getting, I think, oftentimes in the spiritual communities, like, I've seen a lot of this idea, and it's usually perpetuated by like 20 or 30 somethings who are like, you can heal everything and you can, like, be this perfect image, like, that's like not a thing. That's not like the wise woman journey. She does not come to into her crone years looking like she's 25. She shouldn't. That, like, something got missed in the journey if you're coming into your crone years looking like you're 25. Like, where are your wrinkles? Where are your scars? They are a proof of something that you walked through, and instead of being ashamed of that, like, bear it with pride, with gratitude, with grief, with all the things. This is not about fixing or changing your past. And at the same time, we get to and we need to go back in and find what are the faulty programs that are running regarding my relationship to my body, my relationship to womanhood, my relationship to blood, my relationship to community, my relationship to motherhood, all of it, so that I can consciously program it with something that is life giving and life generating and pleasure inducing.
So speaking of that, we talked I have a question around, talking about the womb and the wisdom of the womb. Can you speak to those that might have no clue what that actually looks like? What is like that wisdom of the womb? And, you know, why is it so important for women to connect to that?
So the womb has its own intelligence, first and foremost. They've found gray matter, like what exists in your brain, in uterine cells. Um, it is like a second brain. Um, and it is a sacred portal that we get to carry in our bodies. And I don't mean that just like metaphorically. Like that is actually, it's a portal for life. And I think we've kind of forgotten how absolutely fucking amazing that is. I was talking to a friend, Marcella, actually, she was holding a holotropic breath work at her place this past weekend, and I was sharing my first breath work experience. Um, for those who aren't familiar with holotropic breathwork, it's a way of using breath and music and sacred witnessing to travel into not a non-ordinary state of consciousness, similar to what can be induced through like LSD or mushrooms or different plants, but you do it just through breath. You don't ingest anything, and it people go to amazing places and amazing clearings can happen, and I mean it's pretty quite extraordinary if you've never experienced it. Um, and as part of my ministry training, we had to do like multiple breath works. And my first one, I was shown that moment of conception, when sperm meets egg and create and two become one, literally two cells become fused to become one cell, that is one of the most sacred things that exists on this planet. That moment, because the energy and the potential that exists, the spiritual energy that exists, and the physical, like actual energy that exists in that creation moment is so immense and so sacred. And as women, we get to carry that in our bodies. And not all women get to carry that in their bodies. And I want to presence that too, because that is a big grief for a lot of women. Some women by choice, some women by the initiation of life have not gotten to do that, or didn't want to do that. And all of those experiences are totally valid and important, and don't diminish the fact that we still carry a sacred portal inside of our bodies. And that the original design of that portal is to create life. I had an elder once who, in a ceremony, I was shown a bunch of things about the womb, and I was talking to him because one of the things that I was shown is that this portal it's a house for spirit. And my elder, he did not speak English very well. He was so sweet. This Schwarman Natem from the deep Amazon, and he was like, "Yes, that's somebody else's house. That's in your in your body. Um, that's someone else's house. Even if no one ever comes to inhabit it, that's someone else's house, and so you got to take care of it." I understand that and I think it's important to emphasize, he was translating from Shuar to Spanish to English. So like that possessive,
Yeah.
I think can be really triggering for a lot of women, especially if we've experienced violation. And so I just want to presence that too. Like our language doesn't really have a great way of expressing, because it's not like there's a part of your body that belongs to someone else. I really just want to make that super clear.
Yeah.
And on a certain level, it does belong to creation. It belongs to source. And we get to use it to call in big vision, to create new life, not just in physical form, but in dreams, in visions, in manifestations. That's the promise of that relationship when we start to really consciously engage with it and cultivate it.
I know from a lot of the work I've been doing, one of the things I'd be curious to see what your thoughts are on this is doing a lot of the ancestral healing. I feel the womb is really connected to a lot of that ancestral memory.
100%.
And, and so, and both what has been harmed, but also the power. And I feel like the sacred rage piece is the part that can help you birth and remember what was lost, forgotten, or stolen in our lineages, right?
Absolutely.
Especially in the feminine lines. So yeah, yeah. And speaking about, I know you teach too. The right, I've witnessed you do this work so beautifully. The rites of passage and threshold moments. I'm wondering, like, what do you feel we have lost as a culture by no longer honoring these things? I know we're reclaiming them, right? I'm seeing a huge reclamation, but I feel like there's the other piece of what our culture has lost.
I mean, all you got to do is look around, right? We are a spiritually bereft culture. Um, and there are many now who in a because religion and the institution of religion was so harmful and so damaging, they have turned away from that and have clung to the dogma of science as its own religion. But even in that, I mean, I believe in the scientific method, and I also know that the scientific method is not something that you can apply to everything. You can't. And so that leaves a whole facet of reality out of scientific proof, which doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It's just you can't prove it using the scientific method because it doesn't apply to certain things. Um, Not everything is measurable that way. And so there's a lot of hubris that comes with that. And we've been cut off, and it's really interesting because I've been in like the alternative world my whole adult life. I was never normal. I never like went to like I tried. There's a lot of people in like the spiritual world who they have their story. They like went through corporate, they left corporate, and now they're like in their spiritual thing, whatever. That was never me. I actually did, when I was 12, have a wilderness solo in the woods through Hawk Circle, which isn't the same as it used to be. It's like it still exists, but it's not what it was when I was younger. It was like a nature camp that I went to. We like camped out. We learned tracking. We learned wood burning. We learned like coal burning bowls and spoons. We learned cordage making. We learned plants. We learned simple, like weapons for trapping animals, and then like the whole thing culminated. We learned fire making with the bow drill, and the whole thing culminated in a 24-hour wilderness solo where we were out in the woods with nothing but water, and I think like I had a few carrot sticks for a 24-hour time period, and we just had to be with ourselves and be with nature, and that was a total rite of passage initiation. So
Wow.
I got to go through that as a young
I mean, how many
person.
kids get that opportunity?
Not many, right?
Yeah.
I got to go through that. I sat in my first lodge, like real lodge, when I was 19. And so like I started out on this path really young, and I've been so blessed with some of the experiences that I've had, and the circles that I've gotten to be a part of, and like the ceremonies that I've gotten to participate in and experience, especially as a white person outside of the cultures. Um, and what I'm seeing more and more, and it saddens me so much, is like there was this real, like in the early aughts, like this big, a lot of people were going to spirituality to find, they were like leaving the religion and going to spirituality to find some semblance of truth, something that felt solid. And the sad reality is that because the programming maybe didn't get investigated by the people holding those spaces. The patriarchal conditioning was still so strong. There wasn't really that move towards like what is matriarchy in an embodied sense, not just in a concept. So a lot of those spiritual spaces became really toxic and abusive. And there's a
Yeah, I mean,
lot of harm that got
I can speak to
perpetuated.
some of that
Yeah.
because I didn't have this, I guess, a different kind of support like than what you had. Even though like I have all the lineage, even in my mostly on my dad's side that runs on his mother's side, there was still a level of control and non-acceptance in some aspects because I was the oddball. I mean, I went to Catholic school, almost got expelled in second grade because of some of the things that I did naturally that weren't acceptable. And every time I would open those doorways, I would have somebody in a position of power slam them down. And it wasn't until like the last 20 so years where I finally was able to break through some of those. But I remember early in my childhood and in my teens how much that every time I explored things that, if you want to call like the gifts, right? Like I had the ability to commune with animals and trees and the nature natural spirit world, and I can commune with spirit and the loved ones on the other side. And every step of the way, it was taught to don't shine that, because even in my lineage, my grandmother was Russian Orthodox, and she had an amazing gift, but it wasn't allowed outside the family.
Hmm.
It wasn't allowed outside the family.
I was raised Romanian Orthodox, and it's amazing how a lot. I mean, I realized after my dad died, like a lot of the pre-Christian traditions got sort of buried inside some of those Orthodox
Like we
ways.
talked about it and we did it within the family, right?
Hmm.
But and I watched my dad's sister who was really gifted, but I also saw how it adversely affected her in her life because she grew up in an era where it wasn't acceptable for women to have these kind of gifts or to do these kind of things, you know. And so, you know, I guess I was kind of the one in my family that broke that barrier. As my dad used to say, he says, "You were the wild filly that nobody could tame," you know. But it came at a price because I feel like it's like, how do you break a horse? You break a horse, and you literally break a horse,
Yeah.
right? And I think what I've learned is I'm sure there's going to be women listening that can relate to stories like your own, where you had the opportunities to move through some things and you were gifted with some beautiful things. And then there were others that every time they tried, they were pushed down again and they
Oh yeah.
couldn't.
I mean, I had these great experiences, and I also was raised in this culture, and everywhere
Yeah.
I went, I was told that I my existence was not okay.
Yeah.
Until I really got into the alternative world where there were a lot of us who were the weirdos who were like, okay, we're paving our own path. But again, without really doing that decolonizing work and really investigating, like, what are the internal patterns and relationships to power in particular that created the world that we're in. A lot of those um, really harmful and distorted power structures have been recreated in spiritual spaces. And that's one of the things that I'm really, and I think because of that, a lot of people have walked away from spirituality, and now they're like, science is my religion, or nothing. And there's a lot of nihilism that's happening these days that I'm seeing, and that breaks my heart more than anything, because if you don't believe in anything, then sure, like polluting the planet and raping people, and like not like it has no consequence.
Yeah, I've been writing a lot, trying to figure out how to use my voice into that space of how do we reclaim our roots, because as we've seen, like the European kind of ancestry is probably the most devoid in connection to their original roots. And how do we reclaim that without appropriating? How do we also address the overnight guruism, the social media influencer that has all the right speakeasy with the help of AI and has no roots? And I've been struggling with a lot of the grief around one about how our elders are had got increasingly invisible because of it, when they are the wisdom keepers, they are the teachers, they are the living temples that can help guide us in difficult times like this. And yet, I've seen them, especially since COVID, get put to the side. I know there are groups like ours that we've been a part of that are trying to elevate that and shift that, right? But why do you fear older women are often feared or dismissed or rendered invisible?
Because
What do you feel that?
we're unfiltered. I think there's a certain point um, where you have no more fucks to give, and so you don't. I was reading something recently that was like the majority of the women who were tried as witches were in like perimenopause age, because you just don't have the energy to care what other people think as much anymore. You're willing to say and do what comes naturally to you, and for some people that's terrifying. I think it's really sad that it's terrifying, because we are actually, again, going back to the original design, like there are very few mammals that go through menopause. It's like us and whales, I think, are the only mammal, and there might be one other. The purpose of that is to have elder females to guide the culture who have this accumulated years of wisdom. Females, in particular, females. Women tend to outlive men. Like this is the natural design. And if there's anything I have learned from my elders over the years, it's like they get their information from nature. All of these traditional cultures got their information by watching nature. The ceremonies come from the land, from the place. They're place specific. And so that whole question about appropriation, I think it's really important to remember that like the elements don't belong to anyone. They don't belong to any one culture. Every single traditional culture had air and water and fire and earth and spirit that they were working with. And so fundamentally, like you can go out and listen to a flower and you're not appropriating shit. You're listening to a flower. You're learning how to connect with nature. It's appropriation when you see a ceremony or you sit in a ceremony one time and then you're like, I'm going to run this ceremony because I saw how they did it and now I'm going to do it myself, without any instruction, without any lineage, without any training, without any elders. That's appropriation, right? But to
Or to like what we see is like we have the hand drum, right? That every culture
oh
has a
my god,
history of
sure.
a hand drum, right? But if you go, I want to do a Native American hand drum ceremony, that's like a problem in itself, right?
Right.
It's we all have our own way of working with a hand drum. Every culture has some form of hand drum,
Yeah, listen to the
you know?
skin. Listen to the animal that it came from. Listen to the wood. Like, listen to the elements, and the elements will instruct. That's what original peoples have always done, is they've just listened to the elements. And there's nothing stopping anybody from doing that. You don't have to have training to do that. You just have to be willing to go sit in nature and be quiet for a minute without your phone and listen. And she is asking us to do that so strongly. I think there's this, we've forgotten how much the earth loves us,
Yeah.
and how much she wants to love us. And we're so distracted scrolling, we're like creating this alternate universe that's not even fucking real in this digital space, where like the world around us, the earth around us is still here. and she's asking us to connect. And
And
like,
she's angry.
and she's angry and she's sad and she's loving us. And
Mhm.
she's joyful when we give her our attention.
Yeah.
And there are little things like, yesterday I went to the park with my family and they were like running around playing chase. And I was like, I just need to lay down for a minute and look up at the sky and the trees and the winds waving through the leaves and the trees. And I could hear the tree being like, oh, she's looking like, I'm like, this is for your delight. This is for your delight that I'm demonstrating this right now. Sometimes I'll look at the sky and I'll look at the colors in the sky and the sunset, and it's like, this is for my delight. Like, I get to just bask in this beauty of nature. And what a gift. What a gift. And if we're not doing that, then we're wasting the gift.
Yeah, I had one of the trees, geez, I think it was during the pandemic. The old oaks where I live have been speaking quite profoundly. One of them revealed and never really showed me again after it revealed itself as the Venus of Willendorf.
Hmm.
And I actually put a picture of the statue next to the picture I took, and it was identical.
Cool.
Like you could not like missee it, but three trees over, one of the trees gave me his name. His name was Elmer. And then the tree next to him, which so he showed the face, the whole face, the nose, the eyes, the whole works, and the antlers. And the other one next to him only showed the deer hoof. The whole trunk of the tree looks like a deer hoof.
Hmm.
And her name is Eloise. And so, and it really even taught me the power by observing, listening, and communing with them over the last several years of the role of poison ivy
Mm-hmm.
and why in the summer they're covered in poison ivy. And I said it's to protect them from those
Absolutely.
that don't understand.
Yep.
And it
Poison ivy
really
has a sacred
shifted,
place. Yeah.
right? Because I have a serious, reaction to it. So I said, why are you here? And then I started listening, and that was it. It was to protect the sacred from humans,
Yeah. Just
you
like that
know?
sacred rage. Poison ivy is a perfect example of sacred rage manifest on earth. It's like, you are not being respectful. You don't get to be in this space, or you're going to
And
get.
don't take it personal when we say you're not being respectful. It's
Yeah,
it's a communal thing of collectively we are not being respectful.
that's right. So we got to put up some boundaries. We got to put up some protection.
So, what responsibility do you feel that we have to what's happening now and to each other?
I mean, we have every responsibility to what's happening now and to each other. That is the responsibility. Um, and and we cannot do it alone. We won't do it alone. It's impossible to think that one person is going to turn this ship around. So really the responsibility is to remembering and rebuilding the skills to be in community with other human beings.
Right. I think it also means like, do you know your neighbor?
Yeah.
Do you sit with your neighbor? Do you, are you on your devices more than you are interacting with people? Like, I think, I would love the day these things kind of
I know.
maybe crash for a week and we don't
I
even have
know.
access to them,
I know.
because I think we've gotten so numb to that we don't even my husband and I will go out to eat and we see people out to eat on their phones not talking, and then we wonder why we're lonely. We wonder why we feel isolated, and we have forgotten how to relate to each other. We have forgotten to actually sit in space with each other without devices.
Yeah, and I think that we have forgotten how to ask meaningful questions. We have forgotten inquiry. I think if there's one like communication skill to cultivate. It is how to ask another person a question that is actually going to elicit a response that leads to deeper connection. That's a
Beautifully
skill.
said.
That's a
That is a
skill.
skill.
And it's a skill that we are losing rapidly. And that if without that skill, we can't have community.
Right. Yeah. So, in birthing this so-called new world that some of us are trying to do, a lot of us, I think, want to have it. What do you feel women are being called to birth collectively right now in this moment in history of time?
I think it's our job to vision the world that we want to bring into being. I think right now, that's our work. We have to take the contrast that we're being provided with that no one wants, all of this horrendous shit that we hear about every single day, and our job is to use that to catalyze a clear vision of what we do want and to start calling it out and naming it. Because we can spend a whole bunch of time and energy talking about what we don't want. And
I think
that
we all know what's
we
going on. I
know
think
what we
we,
don't
we all
want.
know.
That is an entropic process that does
Yeah.
not lead to generation, to creativity, unless you are consciously saying, okay, I know I don't want this, and in seeing that, I'm clarifying what I do want and really, really focusing on what we do want. Okay, we do not want rapists in power. Claro, what do we want? We want maybe a different actually design of what being in leadership looks like. We want leaders that are elected primarily by women and mothers because that's how the clans used to do it, right? Sometimes, yes, there were male leaders. Matriarchy doesn't mean that it's only women in power. But the women, especially the older women, the grandmothers, were the ones who elected the people into positions of leadership and power. The grandmothers elected the chiefs, right? The wise elder women who have seen the world, who have enough experience that they can look behind them and say, oh, I know where, if you take that step, where that's going to lead.
Right.
Those are the ones who should be guiding the elder females, because nature has designed us to have elder female. Like, these are the kinds of conversations that we need to be having, and the visioning that we need to be doing. Because if we don't have a clear vision of where we're going, we're just going to create a big old fucking mess on the way there. And some of that's going to happen anyway. Some, like,
Yeah.
creation is messy. Chaos is an actual requirement for order. Order gets created out of chaos. So we're in the chaos right now. We're in the dismantling. We're in the disruption. And it's not going to get better actually anytime soon. This is because more shit has to break down. We're in the breaking down. And in that process, though, there are those of us that are like, okay, got it. Here's where we're going.
I think that's what's missing in conversations. It is, we already know what's broken. We already know what's falling. We don't need to be bombarded every single day of that. We need to start thinking of solutions on like what you said, and envisioning the world we really want to have.
Well, that's what I'm in the process of creating. I'm like building a whole online portal so that women have a place to be having these conversations without trolls, without all that shit that's on Meta. Like, I'm really wanting to create that safe container online virtually, because we are spread out, right? That's part of it. And those of us who are having these conversations need to be able to check back in with one another and say, okay, this is what's happening on the ground where I am. How are you doing it over there? what have you learned that I could learn from, right? Like that skill sharing. Then having the events in person. We have one coming up in the second weekend of October at the Christine Center up in Willard, Wisconsin. We're calling it the Womb Medicine Council, and it's a place for this conversation, for women to come together from all stages and places and walks of life. Of okay, we are the ones who give birth, so how do we guide a culture that protects birth, protects life, protects children, protects the elderly, listens to the voices of the elders to help us guide this whole process? What does that actually look like in practice? We're starting to do it. I mean, that's like my whole spirit showed me very clearly, like, this is your work for the rest of your life. I'm like, okay, here we go. Here are the books you need to write. Here's the platform you need to create. Here's the land that is coming. That right now I'm like in that dreaming stage of really listening to. Right, here's what I'm calling forward. The place, the physical land. Where's the land that's also asking for that, so we can meet each other? All of that. That's like that's the world I'm in right now, because yeah, I
Right.
don't need to sit in the conversation of how terrible everything is. I know how terrible it is. Got it. That's not going to help me build what's next to stay in
Right.
the horror. I don't need to do that.
So, what gives you hope?
Honestly, these kinds of conversations give me hope. My children give me hope. My daughter is badass. Both of them
She is.
are, but my 14-year-old just completed her black belt in karate, and like when I hear her talk about her understand, like she's already so clear in herself and her boundaries and like what she is and isn't willing to accept from men in particular. um she's like clear on what the patriarchy is and how that's not working. She's been raised in ceremony. Like these ceremonies give me hope. My elders give me hope. The prophecies that I was raised with give me hope. um the sunshine, the plants growing in my garden, like my garden still is growing. There are still butterflies, there are still birds, there are still bees. Like there might not be as many as there used to be, but they're still here. And we need to, like I said earlier, like delight in what is here, because otherwise then it's like Joni Mitchell's song, you don't know what you got till it's gone, right?
Right.
It's still here. Let's just be in the deliciousness of what is still here and what we can create. Because there's so
Mm.
much that we can create. And I'm not on social media a lot. I'm not like listening to a bunch of horrible things every day. It is not good
Voice.
for
Yeah.
your psyche. Like
It's a
yeah,
lot of noise.
we do need to stay informed, but there's a lot of noise, and there's a lot of experts out there with a lot of opinions. And I use experts in air quotes for if you're listening, not looking at this, because like what does it really mean to be an expert? Can anyone else be the authority over your experience? I say no. I have a lot of wisdom that I've gained over the years and a lot of things that I'm starting to teach, and I'm still such a baby in so many ways, and I make so many mistakes, so many mistakes. And there's like so many ways that I am very imperfect and still falling down and still like a toddler in the work that I'm studying. And
Well, I
so
think
like
that's the difference with humility, which you're speaking about is humility,
yeah, but
right?
also like I'm not anyone to have an authority over someone else's life experience, because the only authority I can have is over my own.
Yeah. So if every woman who's listening today right now could, in hearing your words about their personal authority and autonomy too, and everything that you've shared so far, if they could remember just one thing about herself, her body, or her sacred purpose, what would you want her to know?
That she's not broken. Like no matter what you've been through, you're not broken. You don't need to be fixed. You don't need to be fixed. For fuck's sake, stop trying to fix something that's not broken.
Yes. That, yeah. It's like I have nothing to say. It's so true. We're not broken. Our body might be in disharmony, but that's not fixing, it's realigning, and
Yeah.
it's all these other things, right?
And also like realignment is a daily practice.
Yeah.
That's a daily practice. That's a moment to moment daily practice. That's not something where it's like you get to the end and you check it off and it's done and then you can just go about your life and not think about it anymore. No. Every day you've got to realign yourself. Every day you've got to ask yourself, is this like on point for me? And every day you get to start over. Okay, phew, didn't get it yesterday. Today's a new day.
Yeah.
Right? There's nothing to fix.
Yes, I pray every day we start remembering that piece, you know. One thing I keep hearing throughout this conversation too is that, our wisdom that we've been searching for may not be right outside of us, right? We may already live within our bodies, our cycles, our stories, our grief, our rage, our ancestral memory. And I just want to say thank you, Tatiana, for really sharing. You have such a wealth of knowledge and wisdom, and I've been privileged to be around witnessing you and learning from you myself, and for reminding us that these threshold moments are not interruptions, to life. They are invitations to go deeper within ourselves. And yes, allow yourself to breathe. For those of you who may have missed last month's podcast, it was about the in between. It was allowing the space to breathe, to create that pause. That's really important right now. Where would, and listeners, those who are listening, where would they be able to best find you, Tatiana?
Go to my website, tatianaberindei.com, TatianaBerindei.com. All my work is there, all my blog posts, any workshops and events that I'm offering, and any updates. I'm still in the process of building it, but there will very soon be a way to link into that online community that I referenced earlier. All of that is going to live in that ecosystem. I'm not, like I said, yeah, I have a really challenging relationship with social media because I don't want to be on there. It's not good for my mental health. And so, like, putting a bunch of stuff on there, I know there's a lot of people on there, and it's like a great way to connect with people. So, like, I'm sometimes on there. I'm inconsistent. I'm working on my relationship with that because really, like, in my core of hearts, I don't want to be, perpetuating something that I don't want to see in the world, which that is really a cesspool of. But there's good stuff on there too, so I don't know. It's tricky. It's tricky. You might
I have
find
a
me.
love-hate
You might find
relationship with
me on
social media.
Facebook. I did break up with Instagram officially. So even though like I have a profile on there, I don't ever log on to Instagram. I'm sometimes on Facebook because you can still create events on Facebook, and I find that to be useful. But um, yeah, and on Substack too, doing some writing on there. But primarily it would be my website, and then you can sign up for my e-newsletter through there, and I send a lot of stuff out through email. And if you sign up for my newsletter, you get 10% off my product store, and that's all on my website.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. And for those who are listening, again, if you loved this episode, please make sure you like, subscribe, follow. We are a community building platform. So your support and helping us with visibility and your shares and your engagement, all that stuff really help elevate us in the algorithms. Because as Tatiana said, like I have my love-hate relationship too with like all these things with social media. And I have learned that, you know, people that practice the craft, like literally sit with the medicine, they're not creating reels every day. They're not on social media every day. They are working with the medicine and the spirit worlds. And I know I'm on social media. I'm trying to work my way into divesting from it the best I can. So your
But it's hard
support would
because
be,
people are out there, and you want to connect with them.
but
So
I understand, like as a crone, as somebody who's sensitive to all the EMFs, all can go all the things. Like I just I just want to go do I want to go do the work. I don't want to spend my time on social media,
Here.
so it's a love-hate thing. So your support for those who listen is greatly appreciated. Until next time on Triggers and Spiritual Medicine, have a great day. And if you could just take a moment, take a deep breath, and just put your hand on your heart and maybe the other one on your womb, or if you don't have a womb, where that place would be, and just give thanks to all that is, all that was, and all that shall be, and just be in the moment with what is, no matter where you are at. And remember that you have magic within inside of you. Never forget that. And never forget of the women, especially the crones, the elders, the wisdom keepers. They are leaving this planet. So it's important that we remember them, learn from them, because they are the ones that know how to guide us best through these days. And there you have it. Have a great day, everybody. Until next time.